The new update is here. That comes with a daily mission robot, which gives you very little for really not much. We're going to ignore this. The real reason we're here, photo mode. This awesome new mode given to us in the free update. So you can use this mode to capture various stills from battles, and you really set these up and customize them to how you want them to go. One of my favourite things about this mode is that you can change character really easily just by pressing right on the D-pad. So you can put each character where you want them, and then you can pause the game and enter camera mode by pressing down on the D-pad. You also have a preset existing move the character does in between standing, which you press up, and you can set that to any one of the super attacks, or being a strong to weak AI, or having an ultimate attack, or evasive, or snapping, or blocking, or whatever you might want to have. So it's a lot of versatility you can use to create really cool photos. You will then enter camera mode when you press down on the D-pad, which will give you these controls to move the camera around as you see fit to get the greatest possible still. You move around with the left and right thumbsticks. The left is to strafe around and the right is to pan the camera, but it's really clunky and it takes a while to get used to. You zoom in and out with the right thumbstick, and you can tilt the camera with the left and right front bumpers, and zoom in and out from the left and right back bumpers, which I wouldn't recommend doing because you lose a bit of image quality. In a previous incarnation of this video I said not to zoom in because you'll lose image quality, but if we do we can clearly see that's not the case, so don't worry about that. But also it actually has the effect that focal length would have on an actual camera lens, which is you can use this additionally for more detail and more versatility in your photos. If we go really close to this freezer race character, take a note of what's in the background. We see the lava, we see the mountains, the rocks, but if we zoom out, or if we move back and zoom in, you can see almost nothing of that. That's not because we're zoomed in more, it's because it's changed the focal length. Essentially what zooming in here is doing is bringing the background closer and out of focus, and as you zoom out it takes the background further away and more in focus. So essentially what you're doing there is creating a more condensed, a more personal photo, and that's actually a really nice look. But that's the basic movement controls. Once you've found your frame, you can also change the filtering of the actual camera itself by pressing X or the left button. You go through various different presets like monochrome, brightness, gradient, old school TV, gradient. These all do different things, but you can do a customized preset that you change to exactly how you want it to look. Which, considering you've got maps like this which are really dull, you can really bring out the vibrancy of what you'd like it to look like instead of what it actually looks like. And then you can just line it up to get the best frame possible, take some snaps, add some overlays, but we'll get into that in a little bit. When you customize these settings, you have the hue and the saturation. You know exactly what those do, you should do anyway. Contrast, you should know what that is as well. Glare is essentially bloom, so it makes things a bit more fuzzy and bright. Focal length is the amount of background you can see. If you put it right down to the bottom, you'll have only the very foreground in focus, while the higher up you put it, everything will start to become in focus. You can get some really good stills by messing around with this and making sure that only what you want to be shown in the still is shown. Aperture does kind of like just the blurriness around the lines. If you want it to be really sharp, I'd probably recommend keeping this down. Vignetting to make a nice vignette around the outside, I wouldn't put it up too high. And camera distortion I found kind of useless. I don't see if there's any point in it. Actually, it's just I mean, you can probably fake some wide angle stuff or some telephoto things, but I think it's best not doing that because you'll mess the image up, to be honest. I'd leave that one alone. You can also advance frames within the game itself by pressing left on the D-pad, which will get the absolute perfect moment and the best angle, the best lighting. It will just let you absolutely customize this to the absolute pristine quality that you want and give you the image that you most want, and it just gives you so much versatility. It's a really cool function that they put this in, that you don't just pause it and that's it. You can advance frames. You can really hunt for the best angle, find some unusual angles and find some gaps to get some action stills from, and behind the shoulder shots and those kinds of things. It's really good for customization. I'm really loving this mode the more and more I use it. When you found your frame, you can take a snapshot by pressing the Y button or the top button. The very first box you can use are different frames, and I'll go through all of these now. You've got a Dragonball Xenoverse frame, you've got these various frames here. They do cost 10 TP medals each, and I think you get 1 or 2 for free when you start. I'm not quite sure, but really you're going to have loads of TP medals probably at this point anyway. The fire one is probably the best. This TV one's pretty awful. This one is pretty nice, not sure what to call that, but this energy one and this dust I guess, is really good. Your conventional anime action lines, you've got 3 variants of those for different directions, center, left and right. On top of this, you also have this weird white box, but you've also got your cinematic black bars as well. You've got some various TV and techie, gritty kind of filters, and this weird clock one, which I don't see a point in, to be honest, but whatever. And that's basically it. And then the rest of these slots are for badges or stamps that you can put on. You've got Dragon Balls, various training symbols, and you've also got the various ranks you can get through missions from Z to D, and whatever you want to put on there. You also have different icons from the game throughout different things, like the story mode icons or Hercule badges. There is more to this list, but really I'm not really going to go over them. You can have a look for yourself. But some of them are better than others, some of them are just quite useless, but some of them are pretty decent. So the fire frame I quite like a lot, the dust frame, the anime lines frame, the energy frame, the various fight wind draws, those are pretty decent. You can delete these by pressing left on the thumbstick, or you can move them up or down in different orders by pressing the right thumbstick. On the lower end of these stamps, you've got the various lighting effects, the lightning effects. I really enjoy these. I think they're really decent. And the rocks, the flying rocks for power-ups and air skids and dust skids and things, those are pretty decent as well, actually. And again, like I said before, pressing right on the thumbstick will allow you to reorder the layers so that things can be behind other things, so you can get the best possible orientation of your layers. And you've got loads of stamps to put on, loads of different stamp layers. You've also got 2 text layers, which I don't really find a use for unless you're going to make a meme, to be honest. You've got all these different titles you can achieve and attain, unlock, whatever, throughout the game. But, you know, ultimately, I don't see a point in this. It just kind of detracts from me. Like I say, unless you make it a meme, in which case you'll go for something like this. Queen Zamasu! You can change the orientation and the size and the colour of these texts with the different buttons that you can see on screen as well. It's just, like I say, they're only for memes, to be honest. Once you're done, press select and you'll get rid of all of the on-screen icons that aren't related to what you put on. But be wary, if you've got the mod on PC to get rid of the HUD, it will toggle off all of your stamps and frame as well. So if you want to use photo mode effectively, you've got to get rid of your hide the HUD mod on PC. Outside of that, if you're on console, it will do its normal function. Now moving on to settings, you can set the action that your enemy will perform to any one of the normal things, your ultimate supers, blocking, AI or whatever. You can set what you and your opponent look to. If you want to be on low health, normal, or have scratches, you can do the normal key stamina and health modifiers that you would have in training mode. And this way that you can perfectly time their attacks so that you can get the best possible still. It does take a bit of practice to get the right timing because, you know, ultimates launch at different times, but once you get that down, you'll be able to get some really nice effects and some really nice stills. Here is that same moment, but timed way better, with the additional moving across frames function that will let you get the perfect moment when the final Kamehameha meets the Divine Wrath Purification, to get the best still possible. It's just so much fun to just play around with this. And again, messing with focal length and aperture as well as glare and contrast saturation will let you get the best possible looking still at the absolute perfect time from the best angle that you want to show this from. So the amount of things you can do is it's actually pretty ridiculous when you really start to go in depth with this mode. And I'm going to show this because I enjoyed it. It's really cool. Look at that. How cool is that? Just piercing through that energy ball. You're nothing compared to Super Saiyan Blue Vegito. Get out of here. And another one of the absolute most perfect timing, punching through the ball. Even though it's going to damage you, you can't tell because it's the frame before the damage hits. How cool. How very, very cool. Face Punch. Another invaluable asset to this photo mode is the ability to display effects on or off, which basically means there are no beams, there's no key, there's no auras, it's just the poses with a little bit of lighting effects. It's so good for getting the perfect pose if you want to do thumbnails for YouTube or whatever. It's just perfect. I mean, look how much better you can get photos without the auras. And this is Meteor Strike without the effects on it, so without the kicking and punching flashes, you can get the absolute perfect frame. I mean, look how good that is. That's just so cool. That's awesome. And with the final Kamehameha, if you pause it just right and go forward a few frames, you can get it to look like he's about to launch it in his face. I mean, it's so cool what you can do with having the effects turned off. It basically allows for any pose for any 1-2 characters. It's so versatile. It's just so much fun. It's really cool. I really enjoy this mode. It's just the more you use it, the better it gets. Body change now. Ooh, Zamasu's about to be in a world of hurt. Even Spirit Sword, without the sword itself, ends up being a cocky emote. I mean, just the amount of things you can do without the effects on is just brilliant. It's just, I didn't think I'd like it at all. I thought it'd be useless, but then when I used it, I thought, this is invaluable. This is brilliant. It's just, I cannot say enough good things about this. It's just amazing. And something as simple as throwing down a key blast without the key blast being visible can bring you some amazing poses that when you put your frames on, I mean, it just brings the whole image to life. It's amazing. Allow me to show you how to make excellent photos now. Before we start, I'd like to mention that this little trick was found by Rabid Penguin Entertainment. Is that you do a character's move and then you go forward just enough frames, you will do their standing idle pose just before you finish. So there we go, there's Vegeta's pose. He has done a full video on it and it's on his channel, so I'd recommend you go and check that out to get more awesome stills like that. Nani? First thing in a really cool photo is have a sense of depth in your photo. And you're going to have this by having various things in different layers throughout the frame. So instead of having this, which would not be a particularly interesting photo, even though there's stuff going on, different size images in there will make it better. Also, zooming in to change the focal length of this supposed camera lens will let you create some really interesting photos. Notice how the background is very close compared to when we zoom all the way out and then move all the way in. The background is much further away. If you want to create really personal, close photos, you want to zoom in, and that will get you what you want. Look how cool that is. So that's the first tip, is to layer your image with various depths and create a sense of depth, which will add to how dynamic your photo looks. Next is the framing. So we don't want obviously this to be the full picture because we've got all this space around the outside not being used. If we want a really nice photo, we could play around with the sense of depth and the perspective of the focal length with zoom and also moving in and out, and then fill the frame and move it in a little bit more so we get the effects as well. And there we have a really interesting photo. And we change around the tilt, maybe make it a little bit, there we go, just tilt it around a bit, fill the frame, and now we have an awesome photo. So that's tip number 2. Make your photo a little bit more original, don't use landscape all the time, and try and find a nice angle to take a photo from. Tip number 3, it should go without saying, but try and get the best quality frame possible. If you notice in a lot of ultimates with this game, there tends to be a lot of blurring on the characters when particularly a beam move is about to hit, not so much on this. There we go, there's the blur. So obviously we don't want to take a snapshot of this, that would look pretty bad, wouldn't it? We go forward a few frames until at least is in focus and sharp. And that's tip number 3, get a nice sharp clean image. And tip number 4, even though it does look really pretty, don't be afraid to turn the effects off. You'd be amazed at what you can actually do if you take them off. You've got some really cool still opportunities there. Obae wa mo shinderu. And tip number 5 is make the best use of the glare, focal length and aperture and vignette settings. The glare is the bloom, so you don't want it too high. If you turn it off, it might look a little bit flat, but you might want that. You might want that, have all the saturation down, and make a nice, clean, crisp black and white image. You might not, but you want a nice, vibrant image with a decent amount of contrast, not too much. You want the hue to be correct, you don't want whites to be red or whatever, so you can play around with this if you want to. You can get some really cool images if you mess around with focal length, depending on what you want to be in or out of focus. Aperture tends to blur the outside of contrast lines, so if you want that on the outside of characters, all the way up looks quite nice. And vignetting can be a great way to add focus to the center of your image. Not too high though, that would be a bit ridiculous. That would be my final tip, is make best use of the vignette, aperture, focal length and glare settings to create a really cool image that you can be proud of. Nani? And finally, here are some of my favourite stills I've managed to take while testing out photo mode, and they're going to be in a nice little slideshow for you until the end of the video. This is going to play out until the end, but until then, stay tuned for the next exciting episode of AxoniusRex.